Okay.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, what are some ways that you think we could educate people better so they don't think the Arab Americans are like typical terrorists, so they don't get racially profiled in airports?
I think just education is a big thing, just for everybody. What we've talking about people perceive others who are different as the other, and sometimes as the enemy. And so, with the few the people who the Arab people who pulled off the September 11th attacks, that label has kind of been placed that they've kind of become the enemies of the nation, and so those people have the Arab American people, not just the Arabs from over across the Arab American people, have been seen to have those connections, but just to educate people that that most Arab Americans are actually Christian. They're not Muslim, and that those who do follow Islam, they follow it as a peaceful religion, and that those who are Arab American terrorists or just Arab terrorists who are Muslim to follow it's a really really radical thing. So I think as long as people just understood really that it's not their ethnicity that makes them that way, it's the way that they think makes them that way. And it really doesn't matter where you come from. That deep down underneath everything, we're all the same. Like, there's no way to tell if someone is black, white, Hispanic, or Arab American or anything like that from looking at their DNA. There's no way to tell. And I think just if we got the word out that everybody is essentially the same, just raised a little different, or it has just different customs, different not meaning bad, just meaning different. I think that might help with people seeing as people in airports, profiling Arab Americans as terrorists. They can just look and say, "Oh, I can tell that his ancestors came from the Middle East."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really all they would be able to. It's really all you can tell about a person just by looking at them is maybe where their ancestors came from. But it doesn't tell you anything about their personality, their religion, their temperament, or anything like that.
That's really interesting. So you think celebrating differences would be a good way to educate people?
Yes, or even just before we can. Eventually, celebrate the differences, but even before then, just show people to realize that, hey, different isn't bad. Different is just different. And it's not even really that different.
Really has nothing to do with who you are.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Why do Arab families tend to be bigger than the typical American family, do you think?
I don't know.
Oh.
Maybe it has something to do with their culture. As I was studying Arab Americans and Arab American culture, and I didn't really come across anything that pointed to them having they had bigger families. It said that they did have bigger families, and that those families often lived close together, and so which that might come into play with equal housing things, that they might be denied equal housing or forced to live in certain places because of other things, which it's kind of all part of this matrix of domination. That these things are all kind of connected, that a person's health and work and everything are all connected, and their housing, and so that might play into why they live together and then have bigger, or that their families live closer together. But actually, as to why they have bigger families, I don't know, but I would, from what I have read and studied about, I would just assume that it has something to do with the focus on the families that the culture has.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if also it has to do with them being so close together, like they have the support from their family to take care of each other.
Could be.
Okay. My last question are, what are some ways that we could create more religious equality in the workplace so that Arab Americans can exercise their beliefs and be able to pray more and feel like they're being.
Right. Well, we have in this country set up, to have the freedom of religion, and especially as you know, as Mormons in this country, we were supposed to kind of have a decree from the founding fathers to let people worship how they want to, the God they want, but also our Heavenly Father tells us to let them worship how, where, what they may, and so I think it just kind of goes back to the educating everybody and letting know that hey, just because somebody is, I think what this is kind of referring to is just Islam and Muslims in the workplace, is that they're not, praying and gonna bring a pipe bomb to work the next day. It's just ridiculous stereotypes that people have put on those people, and as soon as we can learn to, embrace the different cultures and different ways of doing things, I think it'll be a lot easier on the American people. I think a lot of people are they're afraid of change. They're just afraid of things that they don't know, they don't understand, and that comes into play a lot with with whites being the majority, and other and then the other ethnic minorities. We learn in class that the Caucasian, the white people are, some say that they're afraid of disrupting the status quo that they've got going on now. The whites, they get paid more money, they get better jobs, they pretty much can live wherever they want to, and which you can say, well, everybody has the right to live wherever they want to, which, I mean, I guess technically is true. They do have the right to, but a lot of times those rights aren't given to them, and it's usually through white suppression. They want to stay things the way they are. If you're top dog, you want to stay a top dog. You don't want to be thrown down to a lower class. And when they see other ethnicities coming in and doing things different, they see that sometimes as an attack on what they believe, and they don't like that, and they don't want it to change, and so I think they act irrationally, and they act out in ways, and they kind of talk with each other and kind of say, well, oh yeah, this is, and they kind of place labels on these, and those labels just from interacting because of the upper class, the majority group with more power. They talk, and then they can actually put those labels onto the group, and that group tends to believe those labels, and other groups tend to believe those labels, and then all of a sudden they're stuck.
That makes sense. Down
there, not because a group is lazy or a group is just any other stereotype you can think of. It's because somebody else has labeled them as lazy or whatever. With Arab Americans, it's become that all Arab Americans are Muslim, and they pray to Allah and this strange, weird God, and that God tells them to kill all those who don't conform to Islam. And again, it just goes back to that's not true. It's just something that I personally feel a panicking nation has kind of thrown out there to justify discrimination against that people. And so they, instead of looking at Islam as, oh, it's actually a very peaceful religion with actually the same God as the Christians and the Jews, and just a different way of looking at him. And I think people just need to take a step back, actually look at it, and maybe check their pride a little bit. Because that's really all that this has come down to, is just from what we've kind of studied in classes. People on top want to stay on top, and those at the bottom are trying to get at, they're trying to get at least to where the people on top are, but people on top kind of they like being on top and having those privileges that really should be for everyone, but aren't.
Right.
And so, we talk about this matrix of domination and the other, and these just ethnic conflicts that come about, and and this and all this stuff, and it really just comes down to just understanding and loving, and not succumbing to or not believing stereotypes. Actually going out and maybe thinking like, okay, well, why would this stereotype come to be, or maybe even just looking. I think a lot of times people say, well, yeah, I know somebody who's really racist, but and then all of a sudden you're sitting next to an Arab at an airport and you're catching yourself going, oh my gosh, I hope he or she is not on my flight,
Right.
And so I think it really just comes down to, again, education, but being personally educated, not placing that blame on other people, putting it on yourself. And I think that's a very personal way to look at the bigger problem. A lot of times we, as people who are prejudiced, they take those things that they don't like about themselves, or they don't want to take that responsibility for, and they put it on somebody else, and so they say, well, they're dirty or smelly or stupid or whatever, when really you might be thinking those things maybe about yourself and you don't want to. And so it just comes back to making sure that you've got your life and mind in check, and when you do, encouraging others to do the same.
Cool.
Do you have any more questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. This concludes our broadcast today.